Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roy Nascimento. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the President and CEO of the North Central Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff of the Chamber, I'd like to welcome you to our 2023 Congressional Luncheon. We established this annual program several years ago as a forum for our members to hear from and connect with our congressional delegation on Capitol Hill, and to get to ask them questions and find out what's happening in D.C. that's important to them and their businesses and our communities here in North Central Massachusetts. And it's been a great program, and it's great to see this program continue to evolve and grow over the years. So I'd like to start off by expressing our thanks to our congressional delegation, U.S. Representative Jim McGovern of the 2nd Congressional District, and U.S. Representative Lori Trahan of the 3rd District for their commitment to participate each and every year in this forum and engage with local business leaders. So can we have a round of applause for both of you? So I'd also like to acknowledge and thank them both for a citation. We received a congressional citation and a flag that flew over the Capitol building earlier today from the congressional delegation in recognition of our chamber and our region being recognized as the 2023 National Chamber of the Year. So I want to extend my thanks to the congressional delegation. It was really a very thoughtful and unique and much appreciated gift. We're extremely proud to have been named National Chamber of the Year. I think it's a testament to the dedication and commitment of a lot of people, including a lot of you in this room, who believe in our mission and work hard to fulfill it each and every day. So we appreciate the gifts and accept them on behalf of our members, and will proudly display them at the Chamber office. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to acknowledge and thank our sponsors who helped make today's programs possible. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our premier sponsor, Fitchburg State University. We are very grateful for their support. This forum is important to North Central Massachusetts for a number of reasons, and recognizing that they stepped forward as the founding sponsor when we launched this event. Their support reflects their dedication to our communities, their commitment to the Chamber, and our members and their support of its civic engagement. You'll hear from Dr. Lapidus, President of the University, in a moment, but at this time I'd like to ask for a round of applause to thank Fitchburg State for their support. I'd be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge our hosts today, Great Wolf Lodge. In addition to being our hosts and providing a great meal and a great venue, they are also a supporting sponsor. So I want to thank the entire Great Wolf team for their support of this program and many others. And I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Fitchburg Access Television, FATV. They're here today. They're in the back room, our friends from FATV. They are recording today's program and will be airing it in Fitchburg and several of the other communities throughout the region. I know they share a lot of the broadcasts that they do with the other communities. So we're very grateful for your support and your mission of really educating our communities and empowering them from a civic standpoint. At this time, I'd like to highlight a few special guests that we have with us. We have some elected officials and town officials that have joined us today. And I have on my list, first of all, welcome State Senator John Cronin, who's here. State Representative Michael Kuzmarek is here. Northern Worcester County Registrar of Deeds, Kathleen Reynolds Dagnalt is here. Mayor Stephen DiNatale is here from the City of Fitchburg. Fitchburg City Councilor Sally Cragen is here. And from the town of Westminster, the administrator there, Stephanie Latin, is here. So I apologize if I miss any elected officials. That's all we have on my list here. So And Fitchburg State University Special Assistant to the President for Community Government Affairs and Special Projects, A.J. Turigny, will serve as our MC for today's program. Before he comes up, though, I'd like to wrap up my portion of the program by introducing our sponsor, Fitchburg State University, and President Dr. Richard Lapidus. President Lapidus is in his, I believe, his, 8th year, 9th year? 9 years at Fitchburg State University. And he recently announced, if you haven't heard, that he's retiring at the end of this school year. So I, like many of you, was really saddened to hear the news. He's been a great leader and has really helped lead many important partnerships and been very engaged in the community, engaging higher education and the business community. So sad to see him go, but I think we owe him, this is going to be his last Congressional Luncheon, I believe. So I think we owe him a big round of applause.
Thank you, Roy. It's great to be here. Before I start, let me just again congratulate Roy in the chamber for their national award. It's a big deal. Maybe we can give them one more round of applause for really good work. Really good work. I know that the process is highly competitive, and they are really a standout. Also, I too would like to thank Congressman McGovern and Congresswoman Trahan for being here. This started, I guess, maybe 8 years ago. I think, Lori, it was Nikki Songus was part of that, and we're pleased that you come back. We certainly appreciate the leadership and the advocacy of our region. And certainly both have been a strong supporter of higher education and Fitchburg State. So again, thank you for being here. Usually what I do in the 5 minutes that Roy gives me, and he's a pretty stringent timekeeper, so I usually just take a couple of minutes, talk about a few unique programs that perhaps you're not aware of at the university, and then make a small pitch. So we've talked about video game design before, and we've talked about criminal justice and policing, which are unique programs to Fitchburg State and to the state as a whole. I wanted to just float a couple of others, one that just launched and two that are in the process to get you thinking a little bit. So the construction industry has been asking for years for a construction management program, and we have launched that at the graduate level. There's a strong interest in that. It's been supported by industry partners. The Associated General Contractors have been very, very interested in this and have been very generous in helping us to build the program through financial support and other means. So we're excited to launch that should there be an interest. And then we're also working through a couple of additional new programs, both at the undergraduate level. One of the things that we have been thinking about for our region for a while is the growth of the creative and arts economy. And so we are getting ready to launch a couple of programs in support of that. One is a program, Creative Arts Enterprise, it's being called. So it essentially is taking a look at the intersection between the arts and business. So a lot of artists are going to be small business owners. They might be gallery owners. Even if they're simply artists, they need to figure out a way to monetize what it is that they do. And so thinking about that and helping them to understand the intersection there, we felt to be critical, and there seems to be significant interest in that. And then the other program is entitled Expressive Arts Therapy. So this is building on sort of the healthcare, social assistance industry, and thinking again about how the arts might intersect with some of the mental health issues that we're experiencing, and the like, and we think that that is going to be a very, very popular program. The industry has already told us they are anxiously awaiting that to be launched. So those are our two programs that will again be unique to Fitchburg State. There are very, very few programs, even generally speaking in New England, that have this curriculum. So we're excited to get those going. And then my pitch is always to ask you to think about internships. Fitchburg State is an institution that strongly believes in practical application. It's great to sit in a classroom. It's great to read the books and learn about the theory, but giving students the opportunity to roll up their sleeves and find some way to apply what it is they're learning is critically important. It's deep learning. It's a way that they can start to build their skill set ultimately when they graduate. Then they have something that they can demonstrate to prospective employers. So I ask you to think about that. We have been fortunate enough this year and actually the last few years to receive line items from the legislature that support internships. So one of the challenges that many, many students have is that they are students and they're also working part, if not full-time jobs. And so internships become somewhat of a burden if they have to trade off an internship for work, particularly if they're trying to support themselves or perhaps even their families. And not all internships are paid for internships. So the line item is really to allow us to backfill what they might lose if they have to give up that job to take on the internship. So we have the ability now, if you're thinking about an internship and either you're not at what we would consider market rate, or you're just an organization that would love to provide an internship that doesn't have the resources financially to do so, you can still offer that internship and we can backfill it with dollars that are either coming from the state, or we also were fortunate enough to have a very generous donor that was willing to match the dollars the state gave us. So we have a couple of $100,000 a year to cover students that are looking for real-world experiences. So it's a great way for you to perhaps address a gap that you have in your organization in terms of personnel, or a project that you're dying to try but don't have the resources to get off the ground, and then an opportunity to take a look at talent before you have to actually commit to hiring them. So it's a win-win for all parties, and I ask you to consider it. And you can talk to me or others at the university table here should an internship possibility flash into your head while you're enjoying your chicken. So anyway, let me stop and really start this. So let me introduce A.J. Tarigny. As Roy mentioned, he is the assistant to me, the president, and our government affairs professional. And this is round 2 for you. I think you did this last year as well. So he's got some questions that we've put together for our representatives, and then I believe we open it up to the floor for general questions in the room. So again, thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of the meal, and we look forward to the commentary.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mr. President, for the introduction. I'm honored to moderate the speaking portion of the program this afternoon. Civic engagement is crucial for the business community to ensure the voice of North Central is heard at the local, state, and federal levels. We are fortunate today to be joined by 2 distinguished members of our congressional delegation, whom I'd like to introduce now. Congressman Jim McGovern was born and raised in Worcester, Massachusetts, the son of 2 small business owners. In 1982, McGovern started working as an aide to the late U.S. Representative John Joseph Moakley, former dean of the Massachusetts delegation and chairman of the powerful House Rules Committee, which sets the terms for debate on almost all legislation that comes before the House of Representatives. McGovern ran for Congress in 1996, and in 2019, was himself named chairman of the Rules Committee and is currently the top Democrat on the committee. McGovern has made enduring hunger a key focus of his time in public service, frequently speaking on the House floor about the challenges that middle class and working families face in putting healthy food on the table. He's a member of the House Agricultural Committee's Subcommittee on Nutrition, and in 2022, after decades of advocacy, secured the second ever White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. His sisters are school teachers in Worcester's public school system, and his wife, Lisa, works for a nonprofit dedicated to preventing cancer. Congresswoman Lori Trahan. Yeah. Congresswoman Lori Trahan is serving her third term after being re-elected to the House of Representatives in 2022. Congresswoman Lori Trahan is a member of the prestigious House Energy and Commerce Committee and the New England representative on the Regional Leadership Council. In her role on the Energy and Commerce Committee, she has advanced legislation to address the addiction crisis, support teen and youth mental health, protect people from the dangers of social media, and make unprecedented investments in rebuilding our region's infrastructure. Part of the vaunted pink wave in 2018 that elected more women to the House of Representatives than any point in American history, Congresswoman Trahan holds the distinction of being the first Portuguese-American woman ever to serve on Capitol Hill. Prior to her election, Trahan served in Congresswoman Meehan's office, the same office she now holds, for nearly a decade, rising to become his chief of staff. She went on to take the executive post in the technology sector before co-founding a woman-owned and operated consulting firm. In this role, she provided client companies advice on business strategy and steps they could take to ensure staff success, with a particular focus on helping women advance to senior roles. The daughter of working-class parents and granddaughter of immigrants, she graduated from Lowell High School before becoming the first in her family to graduate from college, attending Georgetown University on a volleyball scholarship. Please welcome Congresswoman Trahan and Congressman McGovern to the podium. Have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. You guys all set?
This or this?
Are these on? All right, we're good.
No,
We're
this
good.
is for the TV, and this is for this.
See, he's been here much longer than me.
All right, I'm going to channel my inner George Stephanopoulos so we can begin this.
Ooh, that sounds tough.
So we have a handful of questions. Congresswoman Trahan, let's start with you, and then Congressman McGovern will move over to yourself. So the first is about housing and migrants. In August, Governor Healy declared a state of emergency in response to an overburdened shelter system, now housing both migrant and local homeless families. At the same time, we have employees looking to fill many open positions. Can you share your respective offices are doing to advocate for expediting work authorization approvals? And do you think you can pull together enough support for a bipartisan solution?
Well, thank you, AJ. It's great to be back here. Thanks so much for having Jim and I think I speak for both of us when I say we apologize for the truncated schedule. Trust us when we say we would rather be here. Great first question. I think the Mass delegation has been working in lockstep with the Healy-Driscoll administration to deal with the demand in terms of migrants coming to Massachusetts. And I think all of you know, I'm not saying anything earth-shattering here, this is decades in the making. Our immigration system has been broken for a long time. President Biden had come in wanting to have a very comprehensive approach to securing our border and making sure that we update our immigration laws, ensuring that we strengthen our asylum system. It's under such a burden; it's on the verge of breaking. And also just expediting how we process folks who come to our country looking for a better life. We have not found too many Republicans who want to have that negotiation, in part is because they would much prefer to use immigration as a campaign issue. They think it's a winner. And so sitting down and putting together proposals on how we actually fix our outdated system has been a challenge. There are some bipartisan proposals out there, but this particular Congress has been a tough one because we haven't had a speaker for 22 days, and I think you kind of know the larger context. But what the governor, the stress that they're under right now in finding emergency housing for people who come to our state has been something that we've together gone to Secretary Mayorkas, obviously the work authorization, accelerating that, even so far as like deferring whatever litigation liability may be down the road just to get folks to work. These people want to work. They do not want to be sitting in these emergency housing hotels. I've got 12 communities that are housing migrants, and every time I go, they just want to be able to go work and to go, bring their family into more permanent housing. So I think that is a big part, and getting really creative with the administration on how they can, find authority to make that work authorization happen faster. And the other one is funding. Look, we know Massachusetts only got $2 million out of the more than $700 million in the Shelter Services Program. We need to increase that money for interior states like Massachusetts, who are seeing, migrant patterns change dramatically in this past year. We have sent, of course, letters making sure that that gets plussed up in the budget, but also making sure that there's a special designation so that more money is guaranteed to go to states like Massachusetts. So we're in the midst of our appropriation process now, and we're going to be dogged on that. There's also a number of other areas that the governor has been very detailed in her requests, and she has the unanimous support of both senators and the entire Mass delegation to kind of get us through this.
Thank you. Congressman.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the invitation, and Roy, thank you, and the chamber, and like Laurie, we're really delighted to be here. But given the last few weeks in Washington, root canal is something I look forward to. But I put you way above that, so I just want you to know that. Laurie kind of said everything. Look, we got to fix our immigration system. And, we go to forums all the time and people complain about the migrant crisis and this crisis and that crisis. And I said, well, let's talk about solutions. And when you get to, and nobody wants to talk about solutions. It's too easy to demagogue. On the immigrants that are here and the migrants that are here, we ought to find a way to expedite work authorization. Some of it can be done administratively. Some of it is more difficult because the laws are written so specifically that the Secretary of Homeland Security doesn't believe he has the discretion and the authority to grant it the way we would want to. But clearly, there's not an industry, there's not a sector in our economy that's not looking for workers. I met last week with people from the Long-Term Healthcare Association. They are desperate for people to be able to take care of individuals who are in these long-term care facilities, many with Alzheimer's. And if they don't get the help, they're going to have to limit who they can take, or in some cases shut down, which means then public hospitals have to take over. This is ridiculous. We have people who are qualified, who can take these jobs. We ought to find whatever way possible, designate them however, to be able to get them the work authorization so they can get into the workforce, actually serve our community, earn a paycheck so that taxpayers in Massachusetts are not paying for their shelter and for all the other things that go with it. We just got to figure this out. We met with Secretary Mayorkas. We made that pledge. He's trying to figure out what is available and what is not. Also, in the supplemental request that the President has submitted to Congress is some more money that can be utilized here in Massachusetts. So we need to get that as well. But the time has come to stop demagoguing this issue, and let's figure out how to come up with solutions. And by the way, this is something that the business community, I think needs to be very engaged in, because I think you have credibility on a lot of these issues, especially with some who are waffling on immigration, to be able to basically say, we need this. Our economy needs this. Our businesses need this. So I'm hopeful that maybe some modest things can be done, but I think we need some major changes in Congress before we get comprehensive immigration reform.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, Congressman McGovern, inflation. So coming off a 40-year high of inflation last year, inflation has begun to slow. However, consumers and small businesses are still seeing higher than normal prices for the goods they need. Is there any new legislation that will help alleviate this issue?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, inflation is a real problem in this country. I mean, we can't sugarcoat that. But I would, and it's the result of COVID and, and a lot of other external factors. But I want people to understand that in terms of who is recovering and who is lowering inflation at the most rapid pace, it is here in the United States. I mean, compared to any other country in the world. Now, that's not comfort necessarily to people who are feeling the pinch of inflation, but the bottom line is we are moving more aggressively in the direction to lower inflation than any other country in the world. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act. We passed the CHIPS Act. Again, Massachusetts is benefiting from some of the monies that were contained in these bills, and we continue to try to drive costs down. But again, we need to make sure that our businesses are up and running. We need to make sure we have an adequate workforce. We need to support the kinds of programs that the president of Fitchburg State University just talked about. I mean, we need to get the young people into the pipeline to take these jobs that, quite frankly, we need to fill. But the bills that we have passed, I think, are helping contribute to lowering inflation. There's much more we need to do to deal with the energy costs and also the cost of food. You were nice to mention in the introduction, AJ, that I do a lot of work on food insecurity and hunger. I mean, food prices are up really high for a lot of people, and that has resulted in hunger increasing in the United States, which is really unfortunate. And part of that is not only inflation, but Congress allowed some of the provisions that we put in to help at-risk families, we allow those provisions to expire. And so people, in many respects, have less support today than they did during COVID. But I'm hopeful that we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
My bad. Just echo what Jim said. I mean, I grew up in one of those families that lived paycheck to paycheck, and so I get it. When you go to the grocery store and you see the higher grocery bill or the higher gas prices, it's tough and it takes a toll, and we're not there yet. And everything that Jim said is right in terms of, last June of 22, we were a little over 9% inflation. Last month, we're at 4.67. So we're chipping away at it, and certainly the levers that Congress has are much more longer term, right? The contributors to inflation that we're seeing are the fact that we don't make anything in the United States anymore. So every time we need to buy something that has a chip in it, we are literally relying on a foreign supply chain. We've acted so that we can make goods and bring manufacturing back to the United States to help lower it over the long term. We've passed legislation to stop anti-competitive practices, price gouging, which was rampant post-COVID with oil companies, even with food and shipping companies, and we have to continue to really hit on the levers that we have. Obviously, interest rates are a huge issue right now, the cost of capital for reinvesting or starting new businesses, and then workforce. So I would argue that the investments that we're making in chips and science, making sure that we're training our young people, getting them into jobs that we are going to attract and retain in our country, those are the trades. We're seeing the biggest unprecedented investment in infrastructure this country has seen in our lifetimes, and so making sure that we are churning out tons of good-paying jobs for guys like my dad, who was an iron worker, electricians, plumbers. We need to really make sure that we're feeding that pipeline, but also creating the jobs of the future. We all talk about what it's going to take for us to keep our global leadership position. The CHIPS and Science Act spoke directly to that. We're seeing the programs that at Monty Tech, at Mount Wachusett, at Fitchburg State, at UMass Lowell, all across the Commonwealth, we're really well poised. and that is going to bring down costs over time as the cost of labor comes down. So I think it's really important that we keep doing everything that we can to ensure that lowering costs and making it easier for working families, growing that middle class is what Congress is working on.
Perfect. And that's a perfect segue into our next question about the CHIPS Act.
Oh.
So for most of us here, so passed in August of 2022, the CHIPS Act, which commits $52 billion to grow America's domestic semiconductor research and production, falls under the broader $280 billion CHIPS and Science Act. With the recent federal government award of $19.7 million to the Northeast Microelectronics Coalition, what measures can industries take in north central Massachusetts, where affordable manufacturing and commercial square footage is available, to help build out the industry beyond the lab, to help lift the tide so that the whole state succeeds in this new bold initiative? And Congresswoman, I believe you also had a recent roundtable discussion on the CHIPS Act that our Dean Jen Hanselman was participating on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for Dean for being there. So this is an incredible investment. Of course, it's one where we want to bring not just chip manufacturing back to the United States, but chip design. Right? We've completely lost our ability to design advanced chips, which we're going to need, for all of the future of electronics and quantum computing and all these things that sound so abstract in our minds. Gina Raimondo, our Secretary of Commerce, did a spectacular job in impressing upon us the urgent need for us to pass the $52 billion so that we could get our supply chain back to the United States and over time decreasing the cost and the reliance on foreign suppliers. This part of the state is well poised to win, right? We have the bones of manufacturing sector where industry thrived here. The significance of winning the microelectronics DoD Commons grant is huge for this part of the state. It's not all going to Boston and to Cambridge. It's being spread out across our public research universities, places like Fitchburg State, our community colleges. What we heard overwhelmingly during the roundtable, and I'll just echo what President Lapidus said, we need paid internships. We need to get our young people into jobs where they can get real hands-on experience. I mean, so many of these jobs can't just be learned in a classroom. They have to be out and applying these learnings, these methods with industry partners. And this DoD electronics hub that we now will have in Massachusetts, it's $19 million a year, but renewable up to 5 years. That's a $100 million investment that the state of Massachusetts could see to really bolster not just our defense sector, but all the supply chain that goes in to our defense sector. So this is a real big win for for not just the United States, but also Massachusetts, this part of Massachusetts. And I have to tip my hat to Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, because they made this grant application more competitive by putting matching funds into the application and really working sort of across their government on how to win this. And I think, like many things that are going to come down the pike, Massachusetts is in a great position, and it's in part because so many of the manufacturing jobs that we've had here, whether it was in Fitchburg and Gardner and Lowell, our gateway cities that were hollowed out in the 90s, are poised to really be at the front of this resurgence. And I think this is just a great first step.
Thank you very much.
Look, I think Laurie kind of said it all, which explains why she got into Georgetown and I got rejected. But anyway.
Great spurt. It went 60 blocker.
But I would just say, look, some of the legislation that we have passed in Congress, the CHIPS Act included, I think bodes well for our economic future here in Massachusetts, and especially in central Massachusetts. I mean, the future is bright, and we are poised to take advantage of a good deal of the resources that have been appropriated. So I look forward to, as we come here year to year, to be able to talk about some of the success stories. But as she put, I mean, the future here is very, very bright.
Excellent, thank you. And Congressman McGovern, you kind of touched on this earlier about the new House seat. So immediately following this event, you're both, as we all know, headed down to D.C. Can you tell us what you think working with House Speaker Mike Johnson will be different from Kevin McCarthy, and do you think you and your colleagues can avoid the looming shutdown?
I'm so glad you got this one first.
So people have asked me, like, you know, what are the differences between Kevin McCarthy or, you know, and this current speaker, Mike Johnson? To be honest with you, it's the same menu but a different waiter. That's the way I describe it. The difference, I guess, in personality is that Kevin McCarthy, in my opinion, really didn't stand for very much other than he wanted to be speaker. And so he gave away all his power, including the ability of any one member to call to vacate the chair as many times as he or she wants. He did that on the 15th round of voting to become Speaker of the House. And he gave it all away, and so a group of renegades on the right, you know, kind of utilized it, and he was out as Speaker. The new guy, I mean, again, but having said it, McCarthy, but he brought all the legislation that the extreme elements of the Republican Party wanted to bring to the floor. So I'm not quite sure what their big beef with him was. But the new guy, I really didn't know much about him. I mean, other than to exchange pleasantries in the elevator, I really never worked with him. But last week when he became Speaker, I did some research on his record, and you know, I said to somebody, it's like Halloween came early in Washington. This guy has a scary set of values, in my opinion. They certainly don't reflect my values. On social issues, like a nationwide ban on abortion, basically making no exceptions for anything, including the life or the health of the mother, a strident anti-LGBTQ legislative agenda that, quite frankly, is something that you would think about if you think about the Dark Ages. I mean, it is so oppressive. And the gamesmanship that he's playing now with our security packages to Israel and to Ukraine. I mean, I get it. If you don't want to vote for that stuff, fine. Bring it to the floor, debate it, and vote no if you don't want to vote for it. But to politicize it and to try to use it to undermine Biden's domestic agenda, but in a way that basically saying you can't get aid for Israel unless you allow billionaires and greedy corporations that don't pay taxes to continue to get away with it. It's just not right. And I don't think that bodes very well. There was an opportunity here. We tried on multiple occasions, by we I mean Democrats tried, to say, look, there's an opportunity for a bipartisan path forward. Let's do something different here. And there are some good Republicans that we could work with, including the acting Speaker pro tem, McHenry. I mean, just say, you guys have a majority by 5 seats, fine. But we'll help give you votes if you say we're going to bring more and more bipartisan legislation to the floor. If you promise not to shut the government down. If you promise, you know, to schedule votes. Now, you don't have to say you're going to support it, but schedule votes on things like Ukraine funding or Israel funding. And they chose not to do that. And I think you're seeing what's happening in the very first few days. Things are becoming very, very politicized, and it's really quite unfortunate. Look, I think we're not going to shut they're not going to shut the government down in a couple of weeks because the extreme right wing is giving him some leeway to shut it down probably in January. But we have to do better, right? And just the final thing I'm going to say is, you know, I don't care what your politics may be, but we ought to be electing people who are not narcissists to office. We ought to be electing people who actually want to govern. You know, that means you got to keep the lights on, and you got to compromise. I get it. I'm in the minority in the House of Representatives. I'm not going to get everything I want. But if I can get 60% of what I want, or 55% of what I want, it may be worth me supporting something, right? But for these guys, it's all or nothing. And they don't care about shutting the government down. They don't care who's hurt. It's all about Twitter followers. It's all about attention. It's all about, you know, being, on Fox News or MSNBC or whatever. and it's so destructive. And so, I mean, everybody's got to take a deep breath, and sometimes you got to check your politics and your ideology aside. We got to elect people who want to do the job. And more people are running who do not want to do the job, who do not want to govern, who just want the attention. And it's really, really unfortunate. So we'll see how these next few weeks pan out. I don't think they'll shut the government down in November, but I do think, they'll punt it for a few more weeks, and we'll see where we are in December or January.
Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to Jim's answer. I don't think we have an appreciation for what Jim has to go through as the ranking member on the Rules Committee. That is one of the issues that we've had to deal with, is that 3 of the most extreme members of the Republican conference were afforded seats on that very important committee, which has contributed to this gridlock and this inability for Republicans to even bring Republican partisan bills to the House because the conference is so fractured. Look, we've been here before. We were here just a couple of years ago touting the bipartisan wins that we were able to do in the last conference. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, the Safer Communities Act, which is the first bipartisan gun reform bill that we had in decades. The PACT Act, where veterans are now able to access health care more easily since getting exposed to toxic chemicals and burn pits. So Democrats have a proven track record of saying in divided government, when you only have a 4 or 5 seat majority, the path forward is to work together and to compromise and to realize we're not going to get everything we want, but this will be enduring legislation and policy if we work on it together. The pendulum has swung clear in the other direction. Even the moderates, though, who voted on those bills with us 2 years ago have really voted for some pretty extreme stuff, including reversing same-sex marriage, interracial marriages in this country. I mean, just think about that. So my question is, where are the moderates? And when are they going to come forward if we are going to be in a divided government or a slim majority for the foreseeable future? We really need to change our approach. I'm not super optimistic about this speaker. He is sort of a Trump-endorsed speaker. Definitely voted to not only voted to overturn the 2020 election, but vehemently fought and put sort of a legal pathway forward in terms of reversing that. Jim cited all of the other extreme positions, and so we have our work cut out for us in terms of this Congress being able to be productive, staying open, and showing the American public that the government is going to govern under this new leadership. But we're going to be exhaustive.
So thank you. Do we have one more question, Kat? One more? All right. Kat's keeping an eye on the time to make sure we get to Boston on time. It's for you guys. So R&D tax. So research and development is critical when it comes to moving industry forward, particularly among our region's manufacturers. However, as a result of the 2017 tax cut and Jobs Act starting in 2022, businesses now deal with a 5-year amortization requirement for research and experimental expenditures, making R&D rather cost prohibitive, especially for businesses where this makes up a large portion of their work. Can you talk about your support for HR 2763, which aims to correct the consequences if this doesn't pass, and why you think your Massachusetts Senate colleagues have yet to sign on to the Senate version?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So absolutely, that provision of the 2017 tax change was one that unwittingly hurts our small businesses. Not being able to take that deduction up front and then reinvest has been a problem for our small businesses, and I'm supportive of I think it's HR 2776 something. It's hard to keep all those numbers straight. But more importantly, we're looking for a path. That could be, we are. If you just think about the legislative calendar, we're a bit behind in our appropriations process. We had 22 days off without a speaker. We're now trying to make up for lost time to get the government funded past November 17th. All the while, we've got Farm Bill reauthorization, FAA reauthorization, there will clearly be a pileup at the end of the year. That also provides an opportunity for fixes like this. If we're going to do a larger package, I could imagine enough support being rallied around fixing this, because it's been clear, and I think small businesses have done a great job coming down to Washington and sort of showing how this affects them. This isn't a corporate payout necessarily, but the argument that small businesses are having a hard time with that amortization is what's compelled a lot of members to jump on board. Thank you.
No, I mean, I agree with everything Lori said. The issue is, finding a vehicle to be able to get these fixes in place, and we will see what comes down the road. But there's a lot that we need to do. And you mentioned the Farm Bill. I just want to put in a pitch for the Farm Bill. I mean, the Farm Bill is important to Massachusetts. It's important to this region as well. We have lots of farms in Massachusetts. It's an important part of our economy. I've got close to 2,000 farms in my congressional district alone. And most people are shocked to hear that. I was shocked to hear that when I got my new district, that I had that many farms. But the bottom line is, as you know, farms are small businesses as well. We was at an event at Hollis Hills Farms with Governor Healy. I mean, it's not only a farm, but it's a small business as well. Important part of the economy, brings people to the region. We need to make sure that we have a farm bill that appreciates small and medium-sized farms and the kind of farming that happens here in Massachusetts, and a farm bill that also has a strong nutrition title. I mean, there's no reason why in the richest country in the world anybody should be hungry, and we can remedy this with a strong nutrition title in the Farm Bill. And just one other thing I'm going to say about the Farm Bill: we're also trying to push this concept of food as medicine. Yeah. We talk a lot about it. I was at an event earlier at the Willows in Westboro, and someone asked a question about, how do you control healthcare costs without, capping Medicare or Medicaid or, cutting back on services? One of the ways is to better understand the importance of nutrition and being able to control healthcare costs. And I'll just leave you with this one story. You mentioned this White House conference we did on hunger, nutrition, and health. Prior to the conference, we did pre-conferences. One of them was in New York City. Mayor Eric Adams, who I didn't know anything about, and to be honest with you, I was rooting for somebody else to be mayor beside him. But anyway, he turns out to be a pretty nice guy. But we had breakfast beforehand, and he said to me that he had diabetes so severely that a doctor said to him that you are going to lose your eyesight. You are going to probably lose toes and fingers. He said, well, what do I do about it? The doctor said, well, I don't know, take your medicine. And that's it? Well, I'm sorry, those are the breaks. And this is at a reputable hospital in New York. He then was at another gathering and met with some other doctors who said, we think if we could change your nutrition habits, that we can reverse this. He's like, how can that be? Well, anyway, he did. Now, he's a total vegan, and that's kind of extreme. He was eating something that looked like seaweed and mud, and I told him, asked me if I wanted some. I said, no, I'm not that sick yet. But the point of the matter is, he reversed his condition, and he reversed the condition of his mother as well. And he said, look, my life's going to be better. The quality of my life's going to be better. But the reason why you should care is because think of the costs that would be accrued if I lost my eyesight, if I, began to lose, my toes and my fingers and stuff, and all the other stuff. I mean, this is ridiculous that there is such a disconnect between our healthcare system and nutrition. Some hospitals got it right, some health plans have it right, but by and large, we are way, 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 way behind. And perhaps if we could get better at this, we would have more money in our healthcare system, so you wouldn't be shutting down the birthing center at Leominster Hospital, which I know my colleagues here fought very hard to preserve, and we'd be able to have the money to be able to invest in these other things. So the Farm Bill is important for a whole bunch of reasons, and we need to get one done. We can't get it done without a bipartisan consensus. So in any event, Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Another round of applause, please, for Congressman. Three very quick final thoughts. The president has his leadership team here at Fitchburg State here with us today. So please, if you have any questions about the university or how we can help your business, please visit them. The second, President Vanderhoeven, that's an excellent Fitchburg State sticker that you're wearing. You're representing it very well. And a final thank you to President Lapidus, Fitchburg State University, and Great Wolf Lodge for sponsoring today's event. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.